fabulous boiled, what do we call it? Corned beef and cabbage. Did any of you have that? I was about to say that's the best corned beef and cabbage one might have outside Ireland, except that nobody in Ireland eats corned beef and cabbage. That's a whole other thing. We'll discuss that later. So I'm going to read a couple of poems, if I may. And this one is set in Ireland, back in the little parish where I was brought up in North Armagh, where I went to school. And I went to school mostly because my mother was one of the school teachers. There were people in the vicinity, though, who'd made other arrangements and very rarely showed up. This is a poem about a guy who very rarely showed up, about his life then and more recently. It's called Anseo. Anseo. When the master was calling the roll at the primary school in college lands, you were meant to call back Anseo and raise your hand as your name occurred. Anseo meaning here, here and now, all present and correct, was the first word of Irish I spoke. The last name on the ledger belonged to Joseph Mary Plunkett Ward and was followed, as often as not, by silence, knowing looks, a nod and a wink, the master's droll, and where's our little ward of court? I remember the first time he came back, the master had sent him out along the hedges to weigh up for himself and cut a stick with which he would be beaten. After a while, nothing was spoken. He would arrive as a matter of course with an ash plant, a sally rod, or finally the hazel wand he had whittled down to a whiplash, its twist of red and yellow lacquers sanded and polished and altogether so delicately wrought that he had engraved his initials on it. I last met Joseph Mary Plunkett Ward in a pub just over the Irish border. He was living in the open, in a secret camp on the other side of the mountain. He was fighting for Ireland, making things happen. And he told me, Joe Ward, of how he had risen through the ranks to quartermaster, commandant, how every morning at parade his volunteers would call back Anseo and raise their hands